The key was already on the table when she walked in. Not her key. Hers was on the ring in her pocket, the one with the cracked plastic fob her father had never gotten around to replacing. This key was on a plain metal ring, set down in the middle of the breakfast counter like a question she hadn't been asked yet. Nora Callahan stood in the doorway of the Midway Motor Lodge office and looked at the key and then at the man sitting across the counter from the empty chair where she usually sat. He was large, the way men who have done real physical work for a long time are large. Not performance, just accumulation. Dark jacket, dark eyes, a face that had been weathered by something more than sun. He had a coffee mug in front of him that he hadn't touched. He was looking at her the way a man looks at something he has already thought about carefully and is now waiting to see if his thinking was right. She had lived in Calvary, Kansas her entire life. She knew every face in this town. She did not know his. "Mims. Callahan," he said. Not a question. "You're sitting in my office," she said. The door was open. A pause. I knocked. Nora looked at the key on the counter. She looked at him. Outside, through the plate glass window, the Kansas wind was doing what it always did, moving across the flat land like it had somewhere to be and couldn't understand why everything else was standing still. "Who are you?" she said. He told her. His name was Jack Dyer. He'd been living 12 miles outside Calvary for 3 years in the old Fenwick property, the place with the lights on sometimes and the motorcycle in the yard. He ran a small engine repair operation out of the barn. She knew the property. She hadn't known his name. "You came here to tell me who you are," she said. "Or you came here for something else." "Something else," he said. He looked at the key. "I want to make you an offer. If you're new here, hit subscribe and tap the bell. We tell stories about the road and the people on it. This one matters." The Midway Motor Lodge had been on Route 56 outside Calvary since 1961, when Nora's grandfather built it with 12 rooms, a neon sign, and the conviction that the road would always bring people through. The road had, for a long time, agreed with him. Nora's father, Dale Callahan, had inherited it at 32 and spent the next 28 years keeping it alive. He fixed what broke himself. He painted the exterior every 3 years, whether it needed it or not. He kept the sign lit even when half the letters were going, and the repair cost more than the rooms brought in that week. He died in February, the way men like him died, without much warning and without having settled anything. He left Nora the motel, 40 years of maintenance records, and a debt she hadn't known existed until the lawyer read the will. $287,000. Not to a bank, to a company called Meridian Holdings, whose representative had appeared 2 weeks after the funeral with a clipboard and the measured sympathy of someone who has delivered this kind of news enough times to have developed a system for it. His name was Trevor Slade. He wore a tie in Calvary, Kansas in March. "Your father refinanced against the property 18 months ago," Slade had told her. "The terms require full repayment within 60 days of transfer of ownership. That window closes in 6 weeks. Meridian is prepared to offer fair market value." He placed a paper on the counter. The number was real, and it was not enough. Given the timeline, this is the most straightforward resolution. She had looked at the motel through the window, the 12 rooms, the cracked asphalt, the sign with the M and the second L both dark. She had thought about her father painting the exterior every 3 years, whether it needed it or not. "I'll need time to consider," she'd said. "Of course," Slade said. 6 weeks. That had been 4 weeks ago. She had spent them looking at the books and looking at the debt and coming to the slow, unwelcome conclusion that she could not see a path. The motel didn't generate enough revenue to service that kind of debt. She didn't have the capital to change that. The bank had been very polite about what they were not going to do. She had not cried. She had promised herself she would not, and she was a woman who kept her promises. And then, this morning, she had walked into her office and found a stranger at her counter with a key she hadn't given him. "How do you know about the debt?" she said. Jack Dyer looked at her steadily. "Calvary is a small town." "That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It's not." He wrapped his hands around the mug. "I heard about your father. I heard about the situation. I came to offer a solution." "Partnership," he said. "I put up the capital to clear the debt. In exchange, 40% stake. You keep 60. You keep the name. You keep the decisions. I'm silent unless you want me otherwise." Nora looked at him for a long time. "Why?" she said. He looked at the counter, the key, then her. "I have reasons," he said. "I'll tell you what they are when I know you better." "Get out of my office," she said. He got up, taller than she'd expected. He picked up the key and held it out. She didn't take it. "Keep it," he said, setting it back on the counter. "In case you change your mind." He walked to the door. "The offer has a time limit, Miss Callahan, same as Meridian's." He left. She stood in the empty office looking at the key for a long time. She called Ruth Okafor, who had been her closest friend since second grade and was the closest thing Calvary had to a local historian. "Jack Dyer," Ruth said. 12 miles out, the Fenwick place. He's been there 3 years. Keeps to himself. Emmett at the hardware says he's good for it, pays cash, doesn't linger." A pause. "He fixed the Garcias' tractor last spring. Wouldn't take money. Maria tried 3 times. What does that tell you? That he's either very private or very guilty about something," Ruth said. "Possibly both." "What did he look like?" Nora thought about it, like someone who made a decision a long time ago and has been living with it. Ruth was quiet. "That's not nothing." Nora looked at the key. Plain metal ring, no markings, the kind that could open anything. She went to find him the next morning. Not because she'd decided, because she needed more information, and the information was 12 miles outside of town at the end of a road that became a pair of tire tracks through dead grass about a mile before you reached it. The Fenwick property looked like a place reclaimed by someone with no interest in making it look like anything other than what it was. The house was old, but sound. The barn doors were open, revealing an organized interior. Tools arranged with the precision of someone who knows exactly what they have and exactly where it is. A motorcycle was parked beside the barn, dark and low, the kind that didn't announce itself. Jack Dyer came out when she pulled up. He wiped his hands on a cloth. He looked at her truck, then at her. His expression didn't change, but she had the sense he had already known she would come. "You want to know why," he said. "I want to know everything," she said. He told her inside the barn, sitting on a wooden stool while he leaned against the workbench. He had grown up in a town like Calvary, flat, wind-scoured, the kind of place that either held you or let you go. His father had run a gas station on the edge of town. His own thing, his own name on the sign. Jack had worked it with him from the time he could hold a wrench. His father had died when Jack was 26. A company moved in within 3 months. What company? Nora said. He looked at her. Meridian Holdings. The barn was very quiet. Different town, he said. Same playbook. They find properties with debt attached to recent deaths. They time the offer to the legal window. They make it just attractive enough that the person who inherited doesn't see the alternative until there isn't one. She thought about Slade with his clipboard and his tie and his very polite explanation of why her options were limited. You've been watching them, she said. 3 years, he said. Your father's motel is the last piece of what they want on this corridor. If they get it, they demolish it and build a travel center. Corporate franchise. The whole stretch becomes theirs. Nora sat with this. You said your offer was partnership, she said. What do you get out of it? He looked at her directly. A chance to stop them from doing it again. A pause, and somewhere to put money that means something. It was, again, the strangest thing anyone had ever said to her. I need to think, she said. I know, he said. She drove back to the motel. She sat with her father's maintenance records and the debt letter and the key. She sat a long time. Then she called Ruth and told her everything. Emmett told me something else, Ruth said finally. When Jack first came to Calvary, Emmett asked him why here specifically. And Jack said, because it's the kind of town that still has things worth staying for. Nora looked out the window at the motel, at the sign with the M and the second L dark. Okay, she said. She called him that evening with 3 conditions: no authority over staffing, no access to property records without her knowledge, and whatever his reasons were, all of them, she would hear them when he decided he knew her well enough to say. He agreed to all 3 without negotiation. When do you want to start? He said. Tomorrow, she said. The roof on room 7 has been leaking since November. I'll bring tools, he said. He arrived before she had the office open. She found him in the parking lot assessing the exterior with the attention of someone making a list rather than forming impressions. He had a notebook in his jacket pocket. How bad is it? She said. Manageable, he said, not looking at her, studying the roofline. Somebody took care of this place. My father. I can tell. He made a note. Room 7 first, then the fascia on the south end, then the electrical on the sign. She looked at the sign. You can fix the sign? The wiring is a simple repair. Someone put it off. My father kept saying he'd get to it. Jack looked at the sign for a moment. It'll be lit by Thursday, he said. Not a promise exactly. A statement of what was going to happen. She went inside. She heard him on the roof of room 7 within the hour. The thing she noticed first in those early days was the quality of his silence. She had expected awkwardness. 2 people who didn't know each other, forced into proximity by circumstances neither had chosen. What she got instead was something she didn't have a word for at first. A quietness that wasn't absence. He was simply present in the way that certain people are present. Not filling space. Not performing ease. But there. He worked from first light until the light was gone. He ate what she left for him without ceremony. He did not offer opinions on things she hadn't asked about. When something needed doing, he did it. When something was beyond his knowledge, he said so and found someone who knew. He slept in room 11. She slept in the apartment above the office where she'd slept her whole life. He never knocked on the apartment door without announcement. He left a note on the counter each morning with what he planned to work on. She left one in response with anything he needed to know. She found the notes oddly comforting. The first time she heard him laugh was the end of the first week. She had been demonstrating to a guest why the key to room 4 was sticking, and she had applied slightly too much force, and the key had snapped cleanly in half in the lock. She stood holding both pieces. The guest stared. His wife stared. The children looked at each other. From somewhere behind her, she heard it. Brief, low, immediately controlled. She turned. Jack was at the edge of the parking lot with a paint roller, looking at the sky with concentrated neutrality that was failing badly. "I'll have a new key cut by noon," she told the guest. She got it cut by noon. That afternoon she went to where Jack was working and said, without preamble, "You laughed." He looked at her. The technique was very confident, he said. For a key. Something in his expression was different from usual, less contained, more present. As if the controlled exterior had slipped just enough. 15 years, she said. I've been using that technique for 15 years. And how many keys? He said. She pressed her lips together and went back to the office. Behind her, she thought she heard it again. Quieter. She did not allow herself to smile until she was inside. Trevor Slade came back on Thursday, which was the day Jack had said the sign would be lit. It was lit. Nora was in the parking lot when Slade pulled in, and she watched him look at the sign. All 12 letters illuminated, warm against the gray Kansas afternoon, with an expression that told her his clipboard math needed revising. "Miss Callahan," he said, looking at the fresh paint, the repaired roof, the swept parking lot. "You've been busy." "We've been busy," she said. He looked at her. I have a partner. The debt will be cleared within the week. Meridian's offer is declined." Slade was very still. The wind moved between them. "Miss Callahan, I want to make sure you understand the terms. The window ends in 11 days, she said. "I'm aware. The capital is secured. Is there something else Meridian needs from me?" He looked at the sign, the paint, the repaired roof. He understood that the window he'd been counting on had a different shape than he'd expected. "I'll need to consult with my principals," he said. "Of course," she said. He drove away. Nora sat on the low wall at the edge of the lot and pressed both hands flat on the concrete and breathed. Jack came around the corner of the building. He looked at the empty road. "He'll be back," he said. "With something else. A code violation. A zoning question. Meridian doesn't accept no from a single conversation." "What did they use on your father's station?" "Environmental review," he said. "Old fuel tanks. Possible contamination. 6 months to clear. Cost more than he had." Nora looked at him. "We need to get ahead of it." He looked at her with the particular expression of a man who has been doing something alone for a long time and has just registered that he is no longer alone. "Come inside," she said. "I'll make coffee. We need to think." Drop where you're watching from in the comments. And if this story is worth your time, hit subscribe. We read every one. Now let's see what happened next. The filing came 3 weeks later. A neighbor complaint about signage routed through the county development office, questioning whether the motel's sign met current code standards. Filed by a company called Vertex Property Consultants. Ruth found it in 11 minutes, a shell company in Delaware. 2 directors whose names appeared on 6 other companies, one of which shared an address with Meridian Holdings. Nora showed Jack the filing that evening. He read it at the counter, and she watched his face. "Your father put that sign up when?" he said. 1987. He refinished the casing in 1989. "Do you have the original permit?" My father kept everything. Go through the filing cabinet tonight, he said. I'll help. They spent 3 hours in the office going through Dale Callahan's filing cabinet. 40 years of receipts, records, maintenance logs, permits, organized with the logic of a man who believed that proof was worth keeping even when nothing was wrong, because you never knew. The original sign permit was in the second drawer, in a folder labeled Sign Original. Filed in 1987, renewed in 1994 and again in 2003. Jack held the 2003 renewal and looked at it. The code they're citing was adopted in 2019, he said. This permit predates it by 16 years. Existing structures are grandfathered. They know that, she said. Yes, he said, but most people don't. And even people who know it have to spend time and money proving it. He looked at the permit. Your father kept everything. He always said the paper trail was the point, she said. If you kept the records, nobody could tell you what hadn't happened. Jack was quiet. He was looking at the filing cabinet, at 40 years of careful documentation inside it. He was right, Jack said. She found the other thing on a Tuesday, cataloging maintenance records for the insurance renewal. At the back of the bottom drawer, a folder, unlabeled, inside, one piece of paper. A letter. Her father's handwriting, addressed to no one. It said, Dyer came by again today. Told him the same as before, not ready to sell, not ready to talk. But I think he's right about Meridian. I think he's been right for 2 years. I should have listened sooner. If something happens to me before I figure this out, I hope whoever comes after knows to look at the property on the South Corridor. Meridian wants the whole stretch. Don't let them have it. D.C. 8 months before her father died, Nora sat on the floor of the office with the letter in her hands and felt the world rearrange itself. Jack had known her father, had come to him, had warned him, had been right, and her father had known he was right, and had not acted, and then had died. And now Jack was here, sitting in the same chair he must have sat in when he talked to Dale Callahan. She didn't say anything that evening. She put the letter back in the folder and thought about it all night, and in the morning she made coffee and waited. He came in at 7. She put a mug in front of him and sat down across from him. How long did you know my father? She said. He was very still. I found the letter, she said, in the bottom drawer. He looked at the counter, at his hands, then at her, with the expression of a man who has been waiting for a door to open. 2 years, he said. I came to him 2 years before he died. I'd been tracking Meridian's acquisitions, and his property was the one I couldn't figure out, the only one they hadn't contacted yet. So I warned him, and he didn't act. He said he'd think about it. A pause. He was a careful man. And then he died. And then he died. She looked at him. You felt responsible. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. You weren't, she said. He made his own choices. He always did. She looked at the filing cabinet. He kept the letter. He knew you were right. She stopped. He was a careful man. Something moved in Jack's expression. Not relief. Something more complicated. Why didn't you tell me? She said. Because you needed to decide about the partnership on its own merits, he said. Not because I knew your father. I didn't want you to feel obligated. She sat with this. She looked at the sign through the window, all 12 letters lit. At room 7 with its repaired roof. At her father's 40 years of careful documentation on the counter between them. He would have liked you, she said finally. Jack looked at her. He liked people who kept records, she said, and people who showed up when they said they would. He was quiet. Then He talked about you. When I came to see him. He talked about the motel, the debt, what he was going to do about it, and then he talked about his daughter. A pause. He said you were the kind of person who didn't need to be told things twice. The office was very quiet. Nora picked up her coffee. She looked out at the parking lot, the flat Kansas land, the sky that was too wide and too gray and completely indifferent to anything beneath it. "Drink your coffee," she said. "The gutters on the north side still need clearing." He almost smiled. I know you know," she said. "Drink your coffee first." He drank his coffee. The county dismissed the sign complaint 2 weeks later on the basis of the original permit and its renewals, which Nora had submitted with a 3-page cover letter citing 4 sections of county code. The dismissal notice described the complaint as without merit. Ruth framed it and brought it to the motel on a Friday evening, hanging it in the office next to the photograph of Nora's grandfather breaking ground in 1961. "Art," Ruth said, stepping back. "It's a legal document," Nora said. "Art can be legal documents." Ruth looked around, the fresh paint, the organized counter, the sign visible and fully lit through the window. "Your father would have been insufferable about this," she said. "In the best possible way." Nora felt something catch in her throat. Yes, he would have. Ruth glanced at the door, through which Jack had just disappeared to check on something in room 3. She looked back at Nora with the expression of a woman who has understood an entire situation and is choosing, for now, to say nothing about it. "Good coffee," Ruth said, picking up her mug. "It's the same coffee. Tastes better than it used to." She sipped it. Funny how that happens. Meridian made their last move in October. A certified letter from a Kansas City lawyer named Harmon, claiming the original deed contained a reversionary clause, a provision allowing the original seller to reclaim the property under certain conditions of financial distress. The document looked official. It contained just enough real legal language to be frightening to people who weren't lawyers. Nora was not a lawyer, but Jack had, in 3 years of tracking Meridian, developed relationships with people who were. His name was Paul Garza. He practiced land law in Wichita and had been waiting, as he put it when he arrived in Calvary on a Tuesday morning, for something worth fighting about. He read Harmon's letter in 11 minutes. "There is no reversionary clause," he said. "I've reviewed the original deed. This document references a provision that does not exist." He looked at both of them. "They're not just aggressive, they're fraudulent. And fraud leaves a different kind of trail." What followed was 3 weeks of filings and counterfilings and the particular machinery of people who know the law using it against people who have been misusing it. The Kansas Attorney General's office opened an inquiry into Meridian Holdings' acquisition practices along the Route 56 corridor on a Wednesday. Nora found out from Ruth. She was behind the counter when Ruth called. She set down the phone and stood very still. She went outside. Jack was in the parking lot resealing the asphalt cracks that had opened with the first frost. He looked up when she came through the door. He read her face. "They opened an inquiry," she said. He set down the sealer. He was quiet a moment. The Kansas wind moved between them. "My father's station," he said. "They did the same thing with a different document. He didn't have a Garza." A pause. "He didn't have records. He didn't have anyone who came early enough." Nora looked at him. The wind had pulled some of his hair loose. He looked like a man who has been carrying something for a long time and has just noticed it might be getting lighter. "You came early enough," she said, this time. Something in his face was more open than she had seen it. Not unguarded, Jack Dyer was not a man who went entirely unguarded. But present. Fully present. "Your father kept the records," he said. "You showed up," she said. They stood in the parking lot with the wind between them and the sign lit behind her, and she thought, this is what it was building toward. Two people standing in a parking lot in October in Kansas, having done something together that neither could have done alone. If you've made it this far, you already know this story is worth sharing. Send it to someone who needs it tonight. And subscribe if you haven't. There are more stories where this one came from. The inquiry took 4 months. It expanded beyond Route 56, 3 counties, 11 properties, a pattern of fraudulent documentation Meridian had been running for nearly a decade. Slade cooperated. He had been uncomfortable with certain aspects of his employer's methods for some time, which was the polite way the legal documents described a man who had been doing something wrong and was glad to stop. The Midway Motor Lodge was not touched. Nora got the final clearance letter on a Friday in February. She read it 3 times. Then she went to find Jack. He was in the barn at the Fenwick place. She went there now without calling ahead, because at some point that had stopped being unusual and become simply how things were. He looked up when she came through the door, and she held up the letter. He read it standing. She watched his face. When he looked up, she saw the undefended version of him, the one that appeared in moments that surprised him into openness. "It's done," she said. "Yes," he said. "You should know," she said, "that I'm going to need a partner who actually shows up, not a silent one. The motel needs real work, long term. The rooms need updating, the website is embarrassing, and Ruth has ideas about a common area I think are actually good." He was very still. "I'm telling you," she said, "because you've been thinking about leaving. I've watched you think about it for 2 weeks, since the inquiry opened and your reason for being here got resolved." He looked at her. "I'm asking you to stay," she said, "not as a silent partner. As a person who lives here and works here and fixes things and argues with me about gutters." She paused. "I realize that's a different offer than the one you made." He was quiet. The barn held its sounds, wind against the metal roof, something moving in the yard. "I don't know how to do that," he said. "Not leave." "I know," she said. "You've been leaving for 3 years. Staying somewhere just long enough to fix something, and then going." She held his gaze. "Calvary is a small town. I know what 12 miles outside of it looks like when someone is keeping their options open." He looked at his hands, at her. "Your father said something," he started, "when I came to see him. He said the motel wasn't just a building. He said it was the thing that proved the road still mattered." A pause. He said his daughter understood that better than he did. Nora felt something move in her chest. "He was right," she said. "About most things." Eventually Jack was quiet for a long moment. Then he set down his tools and reached into his jacket pocket and put something on the workbench between them. A key. Plain metal ring, no markings. The one he had left on her counter 8 months ago. "I kept it," he said, "in case you changed your mind." She looked at the key. She looked at him. "I didn't change my mind," she said. "I made up my mind." She picked up the key. He almost smiled. Not quite. Jack Dyer's smiles arrived slowly, like weather systems you could see coming from a long way off before they finally reached you. But close enough that she felt it, the way she felt the first warm day in March after a Kansas winter. "I'll need to do something with the Fenwick place," he said. "Ruth's cousin has been looking for a rental," she said. "She mentioned it last week." He looked at her. "You planned this." "I considered contingencies," she said. There's a difference. He shook his head once, not negatively. The almost smile was closer. The common area Ruth wants, he said. Where? Between rooms 6 and 7. There's a covered space that doesn't get used. The drainage there is wrong. We'd need to regrade before we built anything. I know, she said. I put it in the notebook. He looked at her. You have a notebook. Since week 2, she said. You didn't notice. I noticed, he said quietly. I didn't say anything. Why not? He was quiet a moment. Because watching you figure things out, he said carefully, was the best part of the day. A pause. Every day. The barn was very still. Come back to the motel, Nora said. The sign needs a new timer relay. I found the part in my father's filing cabinet. He looked at her. Of course you did. He kept everything, she said. I know, he said. That's how I knew he was worth warning. She turned toward the barn door. He fell into step beside her, and they walked out into the February afternoon together. The Midway Motor Lodge sign was lit when they pulled into the parking lot. All 12 letters, warm against the gray Kansas sky. Nora looked at it. Thursday, she said. He looked at her. You said it would be lit by Thursday, she said. 8 months ago, the first week. He looked at the sign. Something settled in his expression, the particular quiet of a man who has been somewhere long enough to know it. It was a reasonable timeline, he said. It was, she agreed. They went inside. The office was warm, and the coffee was on, and the filing cabinet stood in the corner with its 40 years of careful documentation, and the letter from Nora's father in the bottom drawer, and Ruth's framed dismissal notice on the wall next to the photograph of 1961. Jack sat at the counter. Nora poured 2 cups. Outside, the Kansas wind moved across the flat land the way it always had. The sign stayed lit. The road ran straight to the horizon in both directions, the way roads do in that part of the country, as if they have somewhere to go and are not in a hurry to get there. That's what the Midway Motor Lodge was. Not a destination. A place people found when they were going somewhere else and needed to stop. A place that proved the road still mattered. A place that was worth staying for. Nora Callahan knew this. Jack Dyer was learning it. That, when you got down to it, was the whole story.